was the reality for far too many Canadians, even before President Trump's tariffs, and now because of them, many more Canadians are at risk. President Trump is in the process of trying to fundamentally restructure the U.S. economy, and that means that our economy here needs to change dramatically as well. And as I made clear to President Trump in our call last week, I will reject all attempts to weaken Canada, all attempts to wear us down, to break us down, so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
It could be a case of 11th hour indecision in Washington right now.
Yeah, the White House is ground zero in an escalating that threatens to further fracture America's alliances and upend the global economic order. Less than 24 hours from now, we're expecting President Trump to spell out his most aggressive tariffs yet.
On Wednesday, it will be Liberation Day in America, as President Trump has so proudly dubbed it. The president will be announcing a tariff plan that will roll back the unfair trade practices that have been ripping off our country for decades. He's doing this in the best interest of the American worker.
The details of that plan remain unclear, and we still don't know if the levies will involve America's largest trading partners, the entire world, or something in between. One senior advisor says the president himself may actually not have even decided yet and could make up his mind just hours before the announcement itself. What is clear is the deepening sense of betrayal felt among America's allies.
Yeah, the head of the European Commission is warning the White House that the EU has a strong plan to retaliate and will use it if needed. And here's a look at what the markets are doing ahead of the big announcement. The Dow down by just 53 points, less than a percentage point there. The NASDAQ and S&P slightly up, but of course this coming after a dizzying sell-off over the last 6 weeks. The stock market, the S&P 500, having really their worst quarter in a number of years now.
Yeah, the market's clearly in a wait-and-see mode before the announcements this week. Let's bring in CNN's Matt Egan, who's joining us live now from New York. But first, I want to go to Kevin Liptak, joining us from Washington. So, Kevin, as I was just mentioning there, there's still so much uncertainty in terms of what we know. We don't necessarily know how many countries are going to be affected. We don't know which countries are necessarily going to be affected. We don't even know the tariff rate that these countries are going to have to deal with. Just walk us through what we actually do know for sure at this point in time. We're hearing that the president himself might not even have made up his mind.
Yeah, about the only thing we know for sure is where this announcement is happening, which is in the Rose Garden, and actually we just got a little advisory. It's going to happen at 4 p.m. But beyond that, the specifics and the contours of what the president is actually intending to announce in the Rose Garden remain entirely unclear. We heard him last night in the Oval Office say that he had, in fact, settled on a plan, but that was a surprise to a lot of his own advisors. This plan has not been circulated widely inside the building. What we do know is that a number of the president's economic advisors have been coming up with their own proposals and plans for the president to look at, whether it's Peter Navarro, the hawkish trade advisor, whether it's Kevin Hassett, who is the chief economist and is seen as something of a more skeptic when it comes to tariffs. They have all sort of combined to come up with their own ideas that the president is assessing. We know that one of the options that has been drafted is this universal tariff, perhaps as high as 20% on all American trading partners. That would be on the most extreme end of what the president could do. And I think the issue that some of his team have with this plan is it doesn't necessarily leave a lot of space for negotiation with these other countries. You know, you can't negotiate with the entire world. And that's why some of the other plans that have been raised are these more dollar-for-dollar tariffs, essentially a true reciprocal tariff. If a country has a duty on an American product, that the President Trump would apply a similar duty to those countries that are importing their items into the United States. And so it doesn't remain exactly clear. What also isn't clear is whether the president will be dealing with trading blocs as a whole, like the European Union, or whether he'll target individual countries within those blocs. So just a whole lot of uncertainty a day before the president plans to come out and make this plan. I think one of the items that is on the president's list to decide, and will depend on what he ends up deciding to do, is how much revenue he can expect to bring in as part of these tariffs. Because, we talk about these tariffs as a negotiating tool, as a way to realign global trade, but they're also sort of essential to the president's entire agenda if he hopes to offset the cost of the tax cuts that he hopes to sign later this year. A tariff, a 20% tariff on all countries importing items into the United States would raise an enormous amount of revenue, potentially as much as $6 trillion over the course of the decade, which is a figure that Peter Navarro raised over the weekend. If he puts into place individual rates on countries with the hopes that that could be negotiated down, that's a far less fixed point of revenue for the president to rely upon for the rest of his agenda. So that's all something that the president will have to consider as he nears this final decision sometime before 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, and that $6 trillion